everyone. Thanks very much for being here. For those of you who don't know me, which is probably most of you, my name is Nate Langston. I'm a tech and gaming journalist. I've stuff for Wired, CNET, GameSpot, and various things over the years, and I'm very, very excited to be here, in part because I did a check on how long I've been playing Elder Scrolls Online for. It's approaching 2,000 hours, which I'm reliably informed by Google this morning is nearly 80 days, which is terrifying, and also feels like there should be an achievement for that at some point, so that would be great. So, you know, I've got a load of questions, so we're going to rattle through these in half an hour or so, all being well, and I want to start really by something kind of broad, and just to find out from you guys, like, what the game at this point, 3 years into its life, almost into its 4th year, like, what does it mean to you? And particularly, obviously, what does it mean to you on the cusp of this expansion coming out? Matt, why don't you start us off?
Well, you got to remember, for us, it's in like its 8th year or 9th year. 10, yeah. So we've been working on this game for a very long time. So we're super happy with where the game is. So I think what it means to me to come out to talk about stuff like Morrowind is like we are really, really happy to be able to do something like that, because you know this is a major new thing to the game, and it just kind of proves that all the stuff that we did to the game to make it better between 2014 and 2016 really has come to fruition. So I think that's the, you know, I look at it and I'm super proud of what the team has done to turn it, you know, to turn the game into this really, really cool thing that's so successful on, you know, 4 different platforms, you know, in many countries around the world, and then we can do this super awesome chapter on top of it.
Yeah. Rich, I'm assuming you'll
I mean, I totally echo that. You know, this has been a long road for us. You know, been on the game for 10 years, and just being able to see the game and see the way people have kind of, their perception has changed. You know, it was kind of cool to do that. So, you know, when we first came out, and now it's like, this is the game, holy cow, this is an amazing game, and that's really gratifying.
Yeah.
So, really proud of that.
Now, obviously, we're going back to Morrowind for the first time. There's always a risk of doing something like this, that there's the hardcore fans, that would be me, maybe some people here, who are like, please don't screw this up, please. You know, this has got to be amazing.
That's us too.
Yeah, I can imagine so. So like with the threat of that hanging over you, like how do you approach this? How do you go into it and think, this is not going to disappoint even the most hardcore Morrowind, long-time Elder Scrolls fan? Like how do you prepare for that?
Yeah, there's so many ways to answer that, but the first way is thinking about it. That's what our whole game is.
Yep.
The whole thing is Elder Scrolls, you know, 700 years before all the other games that you know and love. But, you know, yeah, I think we are very hard on ourselves also. Like, we have to satisfy our own selves. We have people on staff that are super into the lore, played all the old games. I mean, Rich worked on Oblivion. So, you know, it's you know, we've been on this IP for a long time, and I think if we're happy with it, then generally we'll be okay. You know, to make all the people that are into the lore satisfied that we know what we're doing.
Yeah. Good. Okay. I'm just curious. I was sitting at the front here, so I didn't see the aforementioned show of hands. Can you just have a show of hands? Who played Morrowind?
It was pretty impressive.
All right. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. That is a lot of you. That's like 95% of this room. So let's just say for like the 5% of people in here who didn't put their hands up, and guys, it's really cheap on Steam. What is it going to be like for them jumping into this for the first time? Should they've got a few months? Should they be on Steam now? Should they be getting Morrowind, or can they jump in and be totally ready to go? Brian, what do you reckon?
I say they can hop in and be ready to go with the Morrowind from Elder Scrolls Online, because we took the same footprint, kind of like what you guys talked about, and the cities are very similar. So if you want, you can hop back and forth between the two while you're playing it, like right off the bat when you get into Seyda-Neen, and then in Elder Scrolls Morrowind, that footprint is basically the same footprint. Those buildings are basically the same spot. And then when you hop into Morrowind, the old TS3, you would see almost the same frame. There's some tree stumps that don't have things in them in our version, but there's lots of callbacks to Morrowind.
If you get that joke, you know Elder
Scrolls. Exactly.
Right.
There is a tree stump in Seyda-Neen, the starting city, that is well known as having a very, very important and lucrative ring in it that is in Elder Scrolls 3. And if you know that, that's awesome.
And I mean, you don't have to be well versed in Elder Scrolls lore either to play our Morrowind. You know, the team, especially the writers and the designers, went through an incredible amount of lore and an incredible amount of work to make sure that the person that is coming in fresh, you know, understands why the tribunal is important. They understand why these locations in the world are important. So if you're a brand new player, you can just jump in and play.
Yeah, and there's a lot of depth in there, in the whole Morrowind chapter, that if you didn't play Elder Scrolls 3, you'll still think is cool. You just won't get the fact that it's referencing something that happened in a game that was 15 years ago. Like for example, spoiler alert, you get off, after you're done with the tutorial, you get off a boat in Seyda and walk across the bridge to the building, which is the way that Elder Scrolls 3 starts, exact same place. And you walk into the building, and in Elder Scrolls 3, the guy asks you, what's your name, who are you, and that's where the character creation starts in Elder Scrolls 3. In ours, you're walking in with another NPC who has helped you through the tutorial, and you walk in, and a guy is sitting behind the desk who has a different first name, but the same last name as the guy from Elder Scrolls 3. So he's obviously the ancestor of the same guy that's sitting there. And he starts asking you, okay, what's your name? And he immediately gets interrupted by the other NPC who's like, no, he's not one of those guys. He's with me, right? So if you played Elder Scrolls 3, you'll think that is the funniest thing you've ever seen. But if you don't, it's still a cool moment with NPCs, and you get right into it. So that's kind of the example.
Yeah, I love that guy, because there's sort of 3 different ways of creating your character background. You just either roll your own exactly, or you do it. My favorite was always the questionnaire. You know, would you do this, or would you do this? Would you do this? And there was always a fun way of doing it, which is pretty cool. I mean, I'm curious, you know, kind of relates to the last question. I mean, there's 2 ways of approaching this if you wanted. If you wanted to play the original Morrowind again, you can either say, okay, I'm going to prepare for the new expansion. I'm going to play Morrowind all the way through. I've got till June 6th. That's fine. Was it June 7th? June 6th, right?
6.
Cool. Or play this first and then continue it lore-wise by jumping into Morrowind afterwards. I'm curious, which would you do? Would you play Morrowind the original first and then play this, or play this and then go and play Morrowind?
I play Morrowind first, then play
Morrowind first.
I went back before we started on this. I went back, cracked it open, started playing it again, and it was a little hard.
Right.
It's hardcore. It's very, very, very hardcore.
Right. Yeah. It gives a sense then how familiar the dev team is with Morrowind. You know, obviously a lot of you guys have been working on Elder Scrolls for years and years and years, long before Elder Scrolls Online. Like how familiar is that team at large with that original game?
They're almost all of them to a T has jumped in, played it. Even the world builders jump in to kind of see what the spaces are and how they work. So I'd say we're pretty familiar with a lot of it. Maybe not as much as some of the really crazy lore hounds out there, but yeah, we're pretty fluent in Morrowind.
Okay.
Now you can ask me a question, right, to test that?
To test that. That's a little bit down on my list.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to come back to some of those really hard ones,
Okay.
you know, that I didn't run by you ahead of time. But let's just talk a little bit about the game at large here, because I think, you know, it was touched upon a little bit in the presentation earlier. I'm really curious kind of how well the game is doing. You know, I would assume this isn't one big last blowout before the game goes away. The game's doing pretty well. Please tell us we're safe.
That wasn't a question. Yes. Yes, the game.
Please tell us we're safe.
The game is doing very well. We're really, really happy where we are now. To put in perspective, at E3 just 9 months ago, we announced we had 7 million people who have played the game, not including free trials, not including beta, and now we're at 8.5 million. So just in 9 months, we've added 1.5 million people. So that kind of shows the momentum that we have now. So we're doing great, and we actually have said publicly that we want to do things like Morrowind. We're going to try to shoot to do that annually from now on. So we have a roadmap that goes out for many years now that has lots of cool stuff in it, and we fully plan on doing it. So yeah, we're full speed ahead right now.
Great. And obviously consoles, by the sounds of it, are doing pretty well. You're launching simultaneously, all platforms, all on the same day. I mean, how do you, from a technical perspective, like how do you do that? Like that's, I mean, a lot of games will do this, but a lot of games don't have as many varieties of game mode and, you know, pedantic people like me picking it apart. So like how on a technical level are you finding that?
You know, really that job was made possible by the fact that the PS4 and the Xbox One are super powerful. Almost, they're basically, you know, gaming PC specs. So we just have the game, and the game runs on all the different platforms, including Mac. Like we don't need a special version of ESO to run it. It is the game, and That makes it much easier. Obviously, there's some graphical differences because on PC you can take advantage of more advanced hardware, but in general, we don't think about platform when we're designing anything. We just do what is right for the game, and then it compiles across the three, and that works. One, you're using a controller, but I actually use a controller on PC now because I liked it so much when we did console.
Even for PvP?
Even for PvP.
Wow.
I mean, you saw the video that one player was playing with a controller.
She was actually playing.
And the player playing that could school any of us.
Oh, yeah.
She's
real good.
So good.
She came. So when she came in,
no.
When she came in to play, she was dueling other players on mouse and keyboard, and she was packing them up. Like she was destroying them. She was so good.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
amazing.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit, I think, about battlefields.
Battlegrounds.
Sorry, battlegrounds. Apologies.
I'm just making sure.
I was allowed one mistake. That was my one.
I did play a lot of Battlefield 1. Just saying.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just different.
Okay, battlegrounds. You know, when the game launched, you know, Cyrodiil PvP obviously felt that was kind of end game to a lot of people, certainly myself. More recently, we've had dueling, you know, which is very, very, you know, it's micro scale, you know, 2 people, anywhere you want very quickly. To me, Battlegrounds sort of sits somewhere in the middle of that. You know, they're kind of between the two. And I suppose I just want to figure out whether that's accurate. Like, is this going to feel like is it a smaller Cyrodiil? Is it a bigger Duel? Like, how does it fit that?
It's still 3-sided, which is a big part of ESO. But the thing that we felt we really needed to add was a method of, I sit down, I have maybe 20 minutes before my lunch break is over, I want to play real fast. Cyrodiil, you need at least, let's say, half hour to an hour investment to get a good play session out of it. But for Battlegrounds, we really wanted you to just sit, be able to hop in, play. You don't have to worry about a queue depending upon your alliance. We wanted you to get in, get out, and have a quick progression, not only just for player versus player, but making your character stronger as you go as well.
I see. So yeah, you mentioned as well in the presentation that, you know, the alliance kind of restrictions there are gone.
Yep.
You know, the moment in PvP, you know, for anyone who doesn't know, if one of the 3 alliances has a lot of people playing, but another one doesn't, it may well be that you have to wait just because of your alliance, whereas the other guys can get in a lot quicker. So that's gone, which is great. However, I noticed in that trailer that they still had the little icons of the bananas and the Smurfs. That's for sure. You still playing a 7.5 pack, so well done picking the correct class.
Well, in that, that is still what Rich said was placeholder UI.
Oh, okay.
You will see the actual proper coloring of the enemy teams on there. So in the colors, you'll appreciate this, was kind of a bit of a joke about how there's Team Orange, Team Purple, and Team Green in Cyrodiil. Well, that's the colors of the teams here as well.
Okay.
So we use 3 different colors than the alliance colors.
Right. And, you know, this isn't alliances, but I'm presuming that, you know, I can still get 4 people from my guild or my friends.
You can still have a preformed group.
And I can have and they can do that.
Yep.
And is that true even with all 12 people? You know, can I have 12 people that I want? No. So it's 4 people you know, and then 8 people who you're going to kick their asses.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Good. We're going to come back a little bit. In fact, no, let's go to this one now, because it's actually still on Battlegrounds. I'm curious, like, what you would, if you were comparing it maybe to another sort of game or another style of gameplay that maybe exists in another game, like, what's it closest to feeling like?
I'd say somewhere in a slower version of Quake.
It's
Good
definitely,
answer.
definitely
Good
more
answer.
themed around a first-person shooter type feel.
That's why we have Team Deathmatch.
Pick up and play and get in there and go quickly rather than kind of this long-term attrition.
Yeah, and in terms of like that speed, in designing all the maps, we wanted it so that it's maybe 5 or 10 seconds before your first contact with an enemy. So it's very fast, very rapid.
Okay. And in terms of incentivizing people to play a lot of these, you know, in PvP, in Cyrodiil, for example, you know, there's an entire separate currency in the game. You know, the more people you kill, the more keeps you capture, the more times you're made emperor, which is to say for me, never.
I got close.
You know, you're earning alliance points, and you can spend those alliance points on armor, on gear, on all sorts of things, and you can buy stuff and sell that. And that's great. So it really incentivizes you to play, you know, half your life in Cyrodiil. How does that compare to Battlegrounds? Like, is there a new currency system to earn? No currency.
Same one. No new currency,
points.
same one. Yeah.
So you win alliance points in Battlegrounds.
Yep, and the key difference is in Cyrodiil you get awarded alliance points as you kill other people or you do you successfully siege something. But in Battlegrounds you get awarded all the alliance points at the end. So you're not accruing them through the middle of the match. So we don't want people to earn a lot of points and then quit in the middle. So at the end is when all the points are calculated and tabulated and given out.
So you get one giant dump of points at the end.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Good. Let's talk a little bit about sort of main quests, because the main difference here, I think, between how people will enter ESO for the first time versus if they played before is you're skipping the Wailing Prison. You're not going through that initial story progression, I'm assuming.
You are not. There's a new tutorial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a new tutorial that starts you in a different place, starts you basically on a boat. And when you escape that, you go to Morrowind proper. And when you complete kind of the main story, or basically when you leave Morrowind and you go back to the main island of Tamriel, or the mainland of Tamriel, that's when we on-ramp you onto the Molag Bal storyline.
I see.
So we had to do a little bit of rejiggering there, but we got it to
So
work.
you'll still go to the still going to be killed by Manwarco. You're still going to go to the Wailing Prison, but it's a story version of that.
Interesting. So you're going from Vardenfell into the prison and back out.
We're not going to spoil that, but
You
the
will
short
see.
answer is yes.
It's really clever. How about that?
The profit's still there.
Yep.
Yeah.
All of that stuff is still there. They're two separate storylines.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's the answer I was hoping for.
Check.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people watching the live stream when the announcement was made were, what's the word I want to use? Very, very excited to see Nario appear.
That's one way of wording it.
I have a much more obscene word that I used when I was watching with my fiance, and she got very jealous that I was so interested in this character. Why Naru? I mean, obviously she's popular, but you know, why did you go back to her in particular for this new story?
I mean, for us, it made sense. You know, she's kind of a favorite for us, but she's also Morag Tong, which is very, very Morrowind, right? She is from there, like that's
She's
her
Dunmer,
thing, right?
right?
She's Dunmer. She is the perfect guide, and so that's why we you know, it was a no-brainer.
And can you talk a little bit about sort of what we can expect from that? I don't want to say relationship, but you know, she's obviously there for part of it, but maybe not all of it. I think you mentioned earlier on that you know there'll be a particular part of the storyline where she's a much more prominent character. But I mean, is this is she a companion in that she's going to be walking beside us a lot, or is she just going to sort of show up at certain points? Like, could you maybe tell us a bit about?
So she'll guide you through the tutorial.
Okay.
So for new players or anyone doing the tutorial, she's kind of there explaining how to play the game, kind of like Lyris did in the Wailing Prison. But also she's describing a little bit about the crazy place that is Wardenfell. But then she goes off and does her Morag Tong thing, and you run into her through a specific major quest that's in there, which is about house politics.
I see. Okay. And I'm assuming that won't be a problem for the fact that she also shows up elsewhere in the game.
She recognizes you if you've done that.
She does.
Yeah.
She will recognize you if you've done stuff.
But if you haven't, she will introduce herself and go from there.
Excellent. Okay, good. Warden class, big deal. Lots of questions that I could pick from here. I guess the most important thing is how it's going to affect game balance. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about sort of how the Warden fits in relative to the other 4 classes that we've got.
It's kind of, it fits not only just the player fantasy of having a ranger / druid, but it's a different style in the sense that it's more of a support style. Like it's got a lot of healing, it's got a lot of armoring and such from winter. So, and it has obviously damage from the animal line, but it's much more group synergistic than I think anything we've done before.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think one of the things that we've already had to do a lot of, because a class is really, like Matt said, a class is really just 3 skill lines. There's a ton of other skill lines that you can kind of mix and match already, and so we already have to have that mindset when we're balancing. So yes, we're adding 3 new skill lines with this, and we have to be wary of that, but it's not a giant leap ahead in balance problems.
If I remember correctly, the Warden did exist as a class in the very early days. Oh,
one of our alpha builds. Yeah.
Was it an alpha? Okay. And it was obviously deemed it's not coming out. I can't remember the reason at the time. I think it was
just a name.
Yep.
We actually had no class around
Okay.
it at all. Like we had when we originally designed the game, I think we had 8 class prototypes that we put together to kind of see what would be the best mix.
Wow. Okay.
And then we picked the 4 that we thought would be the best for the launch version of the game, and those are the 4 that we have. But yes, the very first alpha build that we put out, which I think the first beta build might have had it too, players data mined, and we kept the name Warden in there, and they data mined that, and that's right. But there was actually no class that was Warden, it was just the name.
I see, okay. Because my follow-up question to that was going to be, so you're bringing the Warden class back, that's exciting, why now? And I suppose I can still ask that question in a way because, you know, you technically could have brought the Warden out with, I mean, possibly not with Homestead, but with any of the other recent DLC, maybe, you know, theoretically. So is there some reason why the Warden's coming with this expansion other than it just felt like the right time?
I think the biggest reason for that is that when you get Morrowind, you unlock a whole suite of things, including the class. So if it was just, let's say, DLC and included with ESO Plus, what happens if you shut your ESO Plus off? Do you still have that class? Do you still have that character? So that's why it made the most sense to go into the chapter, because you get all these things all together, and you unlock the Warden class forever.
I see, okay.
Plus, it's
And it
not
was
as,
the right time.
Yeah, that too. But it's also not that easy to make a new class. Like
No.
it takes a long time from art, with the animations and the effects, and then the balance side, and so yeah, it's a big deal. It's not really easy to just whip one out and away you go.
And I think from what I've understood so far is that the Warden class isn't restricted to Vardenfell.
No.
So it's not a case of rolling a new character as a Warden, playing through the storyline, and then rolling again. Like you'll take the Warden out, or you can create the Warden, ignore Vardenfell entirely, and you can buy the
And go play wherever you
and
want.
go and do what you want.
Yep.
So with that in mind, assuming that the Warden's going to be a pretty popular thing for people to do, is there a risk that we're going to have Cyrodiil just full of Wardens for like 3 months?
Sure.
I mean, we have that within the class currently, yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime we change balance, that's kind of what you see for like the first couple of weeks. Everybody plays that class.
Yeah.
Then they go back to the class that they want to play.
And can I take my bear into Cyrodiil?
Yep.
So we're going to have a lot of bears.
He is your ultimate.
Yeah.
He is the ultimate.
You have to have a double bard if you want it on both up all the time. But yeah, you'll see bears out there.
Did you have to make any adjustments? This wasn't actually on my original list, but did you have to make any sort of technical adjustments to how Cyrodiil, like from a load managing perspective, underneath the game in order to support that many new objects? Because I vaguely remember that there used to be like deer in Cyrodiil, and then the deer were all slaughtered because it was having a negative effect on the game's performance. Now we're bringing bears in. Is that
They're more powerful, so they can be allowed in. No, we've been continually making adjustments to Cyrodiil performance over the past 2 years.
It's got a lot better.
Yeah,
a lot.
It has gotten a lot better, especially this last patch. And we are getting closer and closer to where we want to be with it as a whole, like where we can go, all right, it's good. So we've been progressing towards that more and more and more, and we believe that when the bear pops out there, it's going to be fun.
I mean, there are sorcerers there that have
They have
pets.
that class
Yeah,
too, so it's not like it's something that's
it's not as consumptive as having a one-red deer, believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from the the kind of quality of life service that's been sort of given to the game over the last couple of years, as a regular PvP player myself, that you can tell that improvement has been a lot. The general benchmark is Alessia bridge fights.
Yes.
100 people. If it's over 10 frames a second, then that's good. And right now, it is smooth.
We still have work to do, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
On that.
Tell us a bit more about how the sort of the new content affects the base game.
How it affects it?
Yeah, like what is there? I mean, we've got the Warden class, but are there any other elements that are sort of blended into the main game in some way?
Most of it is
Update 14.
okay. Yeah, like all the extra stuff that we're doing outside of that. Oh, okay. Most of that we haven't really talked about. You got to see a little bit of it in that PvP video where there were the buff trackers on the console UI. That's something that we're working on to put in so that it's a little bit easier for you to see which buffs and debuffs you have
Yeah. Which has been a pretty regular addition to the game. You know, we've had, you know, like battle text, for example, which is incredibly useful, particularly in learning how your attacks, your critical hits and things are affecting other players. It's much more, unless you're using mods, then that was a great addition.
Right. The console players were extremely happy with.
Yeah, I imagine they were.
We always try to have at least a couple quality of life type things put in. We're really looking at balance hard for 14 as well, so expect some more changes there.
Okay. I'm going to move on to talking a little bit more about sort of ESO Plus, I guess, and sort of, you know, there's one overarching, well, there are two overarching questions that you've been asked. One of them you sort of addressed before, which is why is this called a chapter, not a DLC? But I think really the reason that is such a common question is that at the moment, for an ESO Plus subscriber, there's kind of been this cadence of every 3 months there's sort of a DLC sort of content. Either it's something like Thieves Guild, Dark Brotherhood, or Shadows of the Hist, or dungeon-based stuff. At the moment, what it feels like is that for one of those 3 cycles, we have sort of a big paid chapter, which if you don't buy that, you might sort of go 6 months and feel you've not had anything extra for your ESO Plus. Like what's the response that you guys have to that, and is there any sort of change or tweak that you can talk about?
Yeah, the way we see it is basically it's 4 times a year we have an update, and we've been doing that ever since the game launched. So in 2015 we had two DLCs but 4 updates. In 2016 we had 4 updates and 3 DLCs, and then here in this year. And I've gotten to this point in the press event, and I have not yet talked about Homestead, which I am sorry, everyone. But so we had an update that just launched a couple weeks ago, which is housing in ESO, which is Homestead, and that is kind of a free update that goes to all of the players of the game. So Homestead and Tamriel are good examples of not paid DLC, but big advances that came to the game that everyone can enjoy. I think that is one example of what you're talking about. But we are planning for 2 DLCs this year after Morrowind launches. So we're still going to be in that 2 to 3 per year, not including the chapter. So there'll be plenty of value for ESO Plus guys. And also, we're always looking at making ESO Plus better. You know, we added the crafting, we added the expanded inventory crafting bag stuff last year for housing. If you're a Plus member, you get to put twice as much stuff in your house as if you're not a Plus member, and so forth. So we'll keep doing stuff like that to make sure that the value proposition is high.
And there's going to be new houses as part of this patch, right? We're going to be able to live in Valhalla?
Yes. We haven't talked a lot about that publicly, but there will be houses for player housing in Morrowind for you to buy.
Any chance I can buy a Dwarven Spear as a mount?
As a mount?
No.
We're not going to speculate
on
future stuff like that.
Okay. Dwarven Spears confirmed.
I did not.
No, fine. I'm curious, one thing that wasn't touched upon sort of a great deal, but I think it's worth talking about now, is the Halls of Fabrication. The name of the new trial?
Yeah.
You know, which I think a lot of people will be excited about. It's been a while since we've had a new trial. I think the last was in Thieves Guild.
Yep, with more of Lorkosh.
More of Lorkosh. So, can you sort of give us a sense of what we can expect in this trial? And also...
Pain.
Pain.
Yeah, so without too many spoilers, the story behind the trial is you actually meet up with Divith Fear. And I don't know if people, clue into that name, but you actually meet him in Morrowind. So he's a super powerful mage in Morrowind. And so you meet him kind of early on in his life here. And he's discovered an entrance to one of the Sothis clockwork workshops. And of course, being accidentally found, he's accidentally set off the defenses. And so you're kind of working your way through the defenses with him.
Okay. Where does it lie on the difficulty scale? Is this going to be, one of those people that say it's the hardest one ever, kind of like more Lorkosh was?
Yeah, like we have normal and veteran modes in there. So in normal mode, we're tuning it so that the more average player can kind of get through, but the veteran mode is, we want it to be pain.
But the rewards will be great.
Right.
Yeah. Can we talk about rewards?
I don't think those are finalized yet.
Yeah, we've finalized them.
Okay, we'll come back to
that. It's the stuff you get from the other trials too.
There'll be new item sets, there'll be new cosmetic type things, like For the trial in particular, if you think along the line of the rewards for Lorcage, where there was like a skin and a title and things like that, we want to do the same kind of thing.
Okay. Just because I'm conscious of time, I'm curious, will we have many questions from the audience? Just a rough show of hands, anyone got any questions yet? Okay, there's a couple of hands. Okay, we'll come to that shortly. Let me see, what have we got here that we haven't touched on here? So we're 700 years closer to the disappearance of the Dwemer. Now, obviously, we don't find out how they vanished, because otherwise we'd know it in the later games already, but is there any chance we're touching upon what the hell happened with those guys?
We are 700 years closer, but still a long way from when it happened. So.
Right, okay.
Some things are best left undiscovered.
Fine, okay. Fine.
Not the answer you wanted.
The mystery continues. Okay, we've got some good theories though on the web, and over the last few years, I think in particular, about what happened with them. Let's see, what else have we got here? Oh, this is an interesting one. So I plucked this actually off Reddit. People were curious about whether they'll be able to re-roll as a warden.
Like level class they have?
Yeah, as a
no,
change.
you have to start a new class.
You will
be able to change your class into that one.
Okay.
Make your brand new character. That's
Yep.
a reroll.
And any discussion of raising champion points? I mean, probably will, but what about CP caps for gear?
As in gear, there won't be a CP cap increase on gear.
No CP cap increase.
Nope.
Okay. Fine. Do we have any questions before we move on a little bit? We've got a couple. This chap here in the orange.
Yeah. Any advice to the new players coming in to Morrowind for the very first time, unfamiliar with the lore?
We actually did a major effort to introduce the Vardenfell lore to players, like starting in the tutorial, because we know it's different. I mean, even for Tamriel lore, it's different. So there are a lot of books lying around right in the beginning. There are a lot of NPCs to talk to that talk about the different houses and politics and so forth. So yes, we did take that into account when we designed, especially the tutorial. Another thing we did that we tried to made a conscious effort. We set the tutorial in Morrowind, so you can see the mountain. It's all part of the same world. So it's not, you're one place and then you're another place. So you're starting to be introduced to everything right from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, my advice is take your time, walk through it, explore every nook and cranny, read every book. Like that is where Elder Scrolls comes alive, is feeling how the world interacts with everything else. So take your time.
And should we prepare for battlegrounds in a similar way? Should we maybe have a play in Cyrodiil first? Should we get used to dueling?
I'd actually flip that. When you hit level 10, that's when you unlock going into Cyrodiil or Battlegrounds. I would say going into Battlegrounds first may be easier because it's ready, set, go. Where in Cyrodiil we had to create a whole tutorial to teach you the entire system, whereas Battlegrounds, they're schoolyard games. It's capture the flag, run around and hold a point. Like that's stuff that's very simple, very easy.
You're definitely going to find people easier.
Yes, you will.
Yeah.
Yep. You get matched up right away.
So that's good. I mean, it's a stepping stone into Cyrodiil, maybe.
Yes.
People buying this for the first time, or who've always been terrified of the idea of battling 100 people out in the open world. This is almost a primer.
I mean, to that too, we're also going to have a queue that's 10 to 49, much like Blackwater Blade. So you can have a queue that you can go into where you're not going to go against Rich. Well, you're Mr. CP 600,
No,
level 50.
I'm higher than
run around trying to get on the Emperor.
Okay. I think I had another question.
There's a couple hands
I
up
thought it was there. Well, let's do the one I saw first. The gentleman, the black hair and the glasses there.
Hello. I would like to know about silk striders, please. Are they in the game or are they something?
We have them, yes.
Can you use them to travel around?
Silk Striders.
Yes.
So they are a means to fast travel within Morrowind.
We'll have the way shrine system and a Silk Striders transportation system.
Yeah.
Great. There's one just behind you.
Will there be navigation?
In a limited fashion. Yes.
Good.
Limited.
That's called managing expectations.
Did I mention it was limited?
So it's unlimited. Got it. There was a question. There's a lady in the middle somewhere, maybe?
Oh, yes. Will the Morrowind be a new guild, like a Warriors Guild or Undaunted?
It is not. Yeah, you can't join them because so the Morag as a group do not accept outsiders at all. They don't accept really most Dunmer. They're very, very insular, so it wouldn't make much sense for the player to be able to join them unless they were Dunmer, and then it was so. We didn't want to do that, so instead you're helping the Morag in this. So you're going to find out because you're helping Naryu. So you'll learn more about the Morag and you'll help them, but you're not going to actually join them.
If I can channel your lore master, I think he would say that's what the Dark Brotherhood is for.
Right.
Probably.
Yeah, that's good.
They do exist to kill. Both organizations exist to assassinate people, but the Morag is a little different. They don't kill just anyone, and it's but they're cool.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions? We've got 2 or 3 minutes, I think, a couple of minutes. Have we got time for one more? This chap here.
Do you need Morrowind for the DLCs moving forward, or is it separate?
No.
Okay.
Each chapter will be a separate unit.
Okay.
And so you won't get the previous DLC. You'll buy Morrowind and then subscribe to ESO Plus or buy them in the Crown Store.
Right.
You don't get everything up to.
And when the next chapter comes out, you won't have to have had Morrowind. You can just buy the new chapter.
Great, cool. So a guy here.
Yeah. So we saw in the videos that you have added like pretty much most of the creatures from Morrowind into the game. Are you, except like the giant sentry we saw in both in the trailer and all that, are you adding more creatures that maybe become extinct in your old game, so to say?
Yeah, I think most of the ones that you saw in the video are the ones that we have. We have a variant of the cliff racer called the Cliff Strider.
Yeah.
So that was the one that would look like a raptor that was eating the. We have the Hunger, which is the one that was feeding on the dead body, which are gross.
With Fletcher flies, those kinds of things.
Yeah, so it's all things that you would be familiar with. But remember, we also have 2 zones of Morrowind in the base game that have Gwar,
bull matches,
Kagudi, and those will still be there, of course. So you'll be very familiar with them.
Yeah, it was just if you added any new ones, like.
There's some new Dwemer constructs.
Yeah.
Well, sort of. They're more soft as silk constructs. Fabricants is what we call them. So we've got those, but we don't have a ton of ghosts. Morrowind was full of ghosts because the ghost fence was up and all the craziness happened. In our timeline, the ghost fence hasn't actually been erected, and so. Like Matt said, the volcano hasn't really erupted that much, so most of the ashlands are a little bit more contained now. In places like Balmoral, which was basically bone dry and whatnot, and arid, is now actually really lush because that's what it was before the volcano took over. So.
And I guess we're not going to see what's his name, Yagrum, the
Dwemer. The Dwemer, no, he's not there.
Boo. Never mind. I think we're almost out of time. I can take one more if anyone's got one really quick question they want to throw out.
Yeah.
We have one here.
Yes, about the buff trackers you guys shown in the trailer. Is that something which you only plan for PvP, or is it something we can expect in PvE maybe as well?
It does both. So there will be an option when it goes live. There will be an option that you can just turn it on or off, and then you can also go in and choose. If you want all of the long-term buffs, like if you only want it to show short-term, you can do that. If it's just long-term, you can customize a little bit.
Great. We're about out of time now, but I just wanted to give you guys each just one opportunity to say, if everyone here forgets literally everything that we've said before this sentence and back, what's the one lasting thought you want them to take away about Morrowind? Matt?
This is the best time to play this game. We have a ton of people playing it right now. We have a new product for people that haven't played to get in, so if anyone has friends that haven't played yet, that you're trying to talk them into joining you, because of one Tamriel, they can actually play with you now, and with Morrowind, there's new content that you can play together as a warden in Battlegrounds.
What he said. I was going to say Battlegrounds, but he said it better. So.
I imagine Brian was going to say Battlegrounds.
I was going to say just walk around and have fun. Just literally just have fun. That's what the game is built for, having fun.
Great. Perfect. Well, I think that's all we've got time for. So Matt, Rich, Brian, thanks guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.